Courtney,
Hmm. Yes.
you have been sober since 2012.
Yes.
Yes, you're
Hmm.
29.
Yeah, I was 29 when I quit drinking alcohol. I was like 6 weeks shy of being 30.
Wow, good for
Hmm.
you.
Hmm. Thank you.
Um, can you kind of take us back to what made you decide to get sober and like what was the turning point for you?
Yes. So the last time I drank was the last night that I bartended. I was transitioning into working in the medical field full time and going into a 9 to 5, which that's what I thought I wanted to do. And then I woke up in my sobriety. I'm like, I do not want to be here. And this
No.
is not what I want to do. So I had woken up the next morning and, I had my boyfriend at the time was pissed off at me. I had lost my rescue cat for the second time.
I just
Um,
listened to that on your podcast.
yeah, so I lost my rescue cat for the second time because I was in a blackout going outside to smoke a cigarette and I left the screen to the back door open. And then apparently I had threatened my boyfriend's life that evening as well in a complete blackout. So he was not pleased, and who would be
No.
when we're threatening death, right? So it was the same old. But what happened at that moment, it was like all the guilt and the shame and the anxiety and the 10 years of drinking just like really caught up with me at that moment. And I was like, okay, if I find Fiona, that is my cat's name, I was like, I will give up drinking.
Oh,
During that time, too, it was 3 days. During that time, my boyfriend was like, listen, you can continue to drink. At that, we were together for a year and a half. He was like, but I am not going to stay. He was like, I cannot continue this relationship if you're going to continue to drink. So, good news is I found Fiona. She is still with us today, and that boyfriend is my husband. Now,
oh
I'm
my
sure,
gosh.
yeah. So I'm sure people though are like, "Oh, you just like quit," and that is not the case. At 25, I have to reverse it back to 25. I knew that there was going to be a moment that in the future that I was going to quit drinking alcohol. I just knew it. I knew I was going to have to be sober. Because I knew at that point that me and alcohol just did not go together. So from 25 though to 29, I really tried to moderate it. And that's why I'm a firm believer. If you already have a problematic relationship with alcohol, there's no going back because
Mm.
alcohol does take over your brain and it just gets darker and darker and darker. And you become past the point of no return. And then
Well,
moderation in that cycle, it's like, then all of you're doing is torturing yourself. So
and a lot of people say that you can't actually control drinking doesn't work.
no.
Just takes you
No, I
back.
mean, yeah, I mean, and this is the thing because I think, I'm sure you get it sometimes too on your channel, but like people will be like, oh, just have willpower, be a normal drinker. And like,
Yeah.
this is the thing. Even quote unquote normal drinkers still experience a hangover the next day. So I just think with people, there's so many factors of them why people end up having drinking problems. And it's not because they're a bad person or they're morally corrupt or they just didn't have the willpower. We're talking about one of the most highly addictive substances on planet Earth that
Hmm.
is glamorized.
Yep.
I mean, if I was doing heroin, everyone would be like, "What are you doing?" Right?
Exactly.
So nobody's offering me up heroin. So like with alcohol, there's so much more to the alcohol topic than any other drug out there
Well,
because
and
it's
then
socially acceptable.
yeah, exactly. I get a lot of feedback from about people saying, "Well, alcohol is actually worse than heroin,"
Yeah.
and in reality, if you think about it, it's terrible because it's socially acceptable and so easy to get a hold of.
Yeah, and then we're talking about like generations of families that this has run through and what you learn, right? Like what have you learned from your parents? Has there
Yep.
been alcoholism that has run in the family? Statistically, men who come from alcoholic fathers are 90% more likely to become an alcoholic. That's big.
Yeah.
So it's just like from what you see from a very young age of how alcohol is played into your family fabric, and then just the habitualness of it that it becomes. And that habitualness ends up becoming, again, a problem because it's such a highly addictive substance.
Yeah. Did you grow up with drinking parents?
Yeah, so my dad drank, and then my mom actually quit drinking when I think Deb was maybe in her 30s. She quit drinking late 30s because my mom would have one or two drinks and she would become violently ill. So she actually just was like, it's not worth it to me anymore. It's
Yeah.
just not. So yeah.
So, but your dad did?
Hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so did you drink in high school at all?
I really stayed away from alcohol because I didn't want to become one of those alcoholics because it ran in my family and I had siblings who partied. I enjoyed marijuana.
Okay.
I didn't ever think that it was a problem. I don't believe marijuana is the gateway drug. Um, I dabbled in pot, and then at 19 I started drinking because in the suburbs of Detroit, Canada, Windsor is 20 minutes away to go over the bridge, right? So the drinking age over there is 19. So that's really when I like became like in love with alcohol and really in love with the scene, like the bar scene.
Mm-hmm.
So,
It's funny. I remember when I was 18, getting ready to turn 19, I was like, "Ooh, I can't wait to go to Canada." And then they
mhm,
changed the passport law. And I was like,
mhm.
"Well, never mind. I can't just go there with my ID anymore."
Yeah, I don't know what the passport law now is, but that was definitely like right before 9/11. So I got to, maybe it was like yeah, it was in that time. So yeah, I didn't have to worry about all that.
What were some of the most challenging parts in the first few months when you decided to get sober?
Definitely the cravings were a challenge. Figuring out how to life was a challenge. I mean, those first 90 days, and that's why I wrote my book about that topic of the first 90 days, because it's the weirdest thing. You are a grown ass woman,
Yeah.
male, right? You're a grown ass human being. But then when you quit drinking, it's like you become this newborn baby in this grown ass human body. And then you have to relearn how to live. You have to relearn how to life.
Yeah.
So for me, the challenges were more like, uh, it was more of like the thinking all about it of like, what am I going to do? Right. Like even to just kind of like fixating on a craving and going down with that and handling those emotions for sure were challenging.
So how did you get through those? Like, did you turn to mocktails or seltzer waters or tea, coffee?
So 2012, there was no sense of mocktails, right? Like, and the only NA option at that time was O'Doul's. So I did not participate really in the mocktails. I will have to say, I loved Diet Coke. Have you ever had a Diet Coke addiction?
I've never had a pop addiction because I
Okay.
don't.
I mean, I kid with the addiction, but anybody who used to be a Diet Coke, who's listening to this, a lover, knows about that Diet Coke, like love slash addiction. So I just pounded Diet Cokes. I mean, I used to have, and I didn't even like coffee before I got sober. And then in sobriety, I was like, give me all the coffee because I switched off Diet Cokes. But I used to drink Diet Cokes like when I would wake up, like that would be my coffee. So I just crushed Diet Cokes, just crushed
Oh,
them. Hmm.
like even more so. Because it's funny that you say that because my mother-in-law, when she quits drinking, she drinks more Pepsi.
Hmm.
So it
Mm.
must be the sugar or something.
Well, yeah, it's the sugar because when you quit drinking alcohol, you're not only beating or dealing with one substance. I mean, then you have the sugar one that came on top of it because of
Yeah.
all the, alcohol that you put into your system and how it breaks down into sugar and stuff. So, um, yeah. I mean, I wasn't, like, crushing, like, a pack of Diet Cokes a day, but, like, when I say I mean, I would probably might have, like, 3 in a day, 4 in a day. I don't think I ever went past 5. Um, but that would be what I would just drink, you know?
And did you quit smoking at the same time you quit drinking?
I quit smoking cigarettes. So my grandmother passed away on no September 14th. I quit smoking 6 weeks after I quit drinking
Oh
because
wow.
my father passed away from lung cancer. Very like was diagnosed and passed away within 6 months. So my grandmother always said to me like, Courtney, when are you going to quit smoking cigarettes? So I wrote her a letter And in the letter, I said I would quit smoking cigarettes when I flew home from Michigan from her funeral. So I tucked that away in her casket. So
Oh,
I couldn't really go back on my word.
that like gives me
That's
goosebumps.
oh my God, good. um,
Oh
so
man.
yeah, so like quitting drinking and then quitting smoking. And I don't recommend that to people. It was too much. It was too much because some people are like that, like it's all or nothing. But then it's just pick your battle and go from there.
Yeah, I've never had a cigarette addiction, so I don't. I mean, I've heard it's hard. Some people have said it's harder than quitting drinking, but
Yeah, I mean, it's compared to almost like a heroin addiction. Listen, if the world was going to end, I would go to the store and buy Peck Parliament Lights and sit and chain smoke over drinking alcohol. Like, that is what I would do. And I'm fine with that, but I won't pick up a pack until that day happens. But
oh man.
that's how I used to love smoking more than drinking, truly.
Wow. Ugh.
Mhm.
What was your drink of choice? Anything?
Yeah, I was an animal. I was a pig person. So like whiskey, Jameson,
Yeah.
Jaeger, cherry bombs, all of that stuff. So right before I quit, that was right on the rise of the IPAs. So I started dabbling a little bit in the IPAs, like Bell's Two Hearted. So live in Michigan, as I said, and so Bell's Brewery is over on the west side of the state. So that was starting to drip through, and I was like, oh my God, these are great. So I that was when the end of my career was when that really was starting to happen.
Oh, funny because I was an IPA girl.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Jameson.
Yeah.
So
Then like wine, it just all depended, right? Like so then some nights it was like I would crush red wine. Like it didn't really matter.
because it's healthy, right?
Well, yeah, I didn't even well, I thought I was like sophisticated with my red
Exactly.
wine, but it was still. And then when I went back to bartending and I would smell that, opening up that bottle of red, I was
Oh,
like, this smells disgusting. So like I just give a giggle to the people who think that they're wine connoisseurs and like beer connoisseurs. I'm like, this shit stinks.
it
Like
does.
stinks.
And I want to ask about sober bartending, but I
Yeah.
also want to mention something that I noticed since I quit drinking is I can smell alcohol just as bad as I can smell cigarettes now.
Yeah,
Or
you got welcome to the Shark Nose Club. That's what it's
shark
like weird.
shark
Yes.
nose.
Yeah. My sister tells me all the time I have a shark nose, but yeah, you can smell alcohol from like a mile away now. It's wild.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Hmm.
So you bartended while you were sober?
Yeah, so that medical job I went into, I thought I wanted to be, I went in for a medical assistant and then I wanted to go get my nursing degree. But in being in this medical job. I'm like, this is not what I want to do. So, and then at that time, that's when I started to branch out into uh, with an MLM Beachbody and doing health coaching. Oh,
I
are
was
you a
gonna
beach?
I
Go
was
ahead.
gonna ask you because I heard you mention something you did health and fitness coaching with an
Hmm.
MLM, and I'm like Beachbody.
Yeah.
Me too.
Right. But I'm grateful for that because honestly, at that point, because I was 3 years into my sobriety journey. And then that opportunity came a couple months before I got married. And it was the perfect exit for me to start focusing on that. And then I went back to bartending because the place that I worked at, I had worked at for years. So I had a close relationship with the family who owned the place. So I went back. So, I
Oh,
mean, bartending was amazing because it led me to coaching, the health coaching, and then which led me to building sober vibes and then getting into my own business of sober coaching. So,
that is awesome. I do want
mhm.
to touch on the Beachbody thing because
Yes, let's do
since
it.
since I quit drinking, I
Hmm.
realized that Beachbody almost advertises for alcohol just as much as it does health and fitness. Like a lot of the coaches that I follow or the groups that I was a part of, they were all about moderation and balance and make sure you have your margarita and your tacos and your wine and mom life, and it was just like always about alcohol, and I feel like that's kind of when I dove more into drinking. That's when I don't know. I don't know really when my drinking started besides 2020, but um I just feel like Beachbody had a big thing with drinking.
Yeah. So when I was in it, it was 2015, and then I started branching out to do my own thing, like 2018ish, and then by fully 2019, I was out of it, and I did a couple of the trips, and but this is in the MLM in the MLM communities in general. There is a
Okay.
lot of drinking that goes on.
Okay.
It is a type of environment that just like, breeds to party. But what I witnessed at the Beachbody thing, it was exactly that. It was exactly with the mom because it geared towards stay-at-home moms,
Yep.
to join and to become a coach and to make your own income, right? So, yeah. And at the now it's kind of sometimes gives me a giggle now because it's like now in 2024, it's like so much has come out about alcohol and how bad it is for you, which we've known this for so long, but now, um, now things are actually studies are being shown,
Yeah.
understanding how wine, the wine industry would fund that heart, saying a glass of wine is good for your heart.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like you gotta a lot of those studies were funded by alcohol companies. So the mask is lifting. So like now too of people and what you're seeing as well as a lot of these women are getting older and that perimenopause and menopause with plus alcohol equals a effing disaster. I'm sorry, I won't swear on here. But like
Not
it
here.
equals a disaster because hormones and alcohol for women, it's whacked. That's people ask me all the time. They're like, what's the difference between like men and women in recovery and in sobriety? I'm like, men don't deal with second cycles. Men do not deal with second cycles and hormones. So it's very different for men and women.
Ooh, that's a good topic to touch on.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I have a Beachbody coach on my social media, and I don't know, she is preaching about hormones and hormone health, but yet she's still constantly showing drinking. I'm like, I guess like because I was in that world and I would always take my foodie selfies, my wine selfies, and
Mhm.
be a part of the group. And now looking at it, it's like it's cringeworthy. I mean, it's not like I'm just like, girl, you could get the body you wanted if you actually just quit drinking margaritas and promoting them.
Yeah, yeah. What I really liked about my time with that was the community building and coaching.
Yeah,
I did not like growing a team, but I did like and believed in the products
yeah,
because, I did get amazing results with a lot of that eating plan because, 21-day fix, it's like that is basic macros in the easiest way anybody can comprehend it, right? And like
yeah.
those exercise plans are really good of like this is what you need to do is like 30 minutes a day. And even as women get older, it's like you don't need to be killing yourself at the gym. So like
No.
I did like a lot of that, but yes, I agree with you. The other stuff, it never made sense.
Yeah.
It never made sense.
That's why I was like excited to talk to you about. I was like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, she did Beachbody too. I wonder if she feels the same way. I
Mhm.
started Beachbody in 2018 and I left in 2019 and got my personal training certificate,
Mhm.
but uh, only worked there for a few years. So,
Yeah, and then plus two, it's like, you're trying to a lot of these influencers are trying to sell you on that lifestyle. So that's where that gets really tricky. I mean, because I've been on Instagram since 2000, like 2011 when it came out. My sister from Colorado was like, "You need to get on this app. This is great." So, like, I have seen the evolution of Instagram and the phoniness, like even too how some people portray their marriages, right? Like a lot
right.
of those Beachbody chicks that I was in, they were my upline, they were very stressed out behind the scenes. They hated their husbands, like, and were like chaotic messes, right? With
Yeah.
borderline drinking problems. And that's not a judgment. This is an observation because I
Yeah.
am an observant person and I will just sit back and like watch, you know? And so, but they wanted to make sure that you knew that they were doing their exercise and following the food plans. And then it got into, and that's why I started to leave it because it actually was messing me up mentally with more body dysmorphia. And I didn't like keep coming on to be like, well, I gained 10 pounds. Like now let's do this other program to lose it. Right. Like I just was like, this is not good for my mental and this is not good for my physical. And like, I am not even kidding. Do you have kids?
Yeah.
Okay. So, after you have a child, your body changes. Like,
Yeah.
I gained in my pregnancy with my little dictator, and I was put on bed rest. I gained 50 pounds on top of the 20 pounds that I gained in COVID. Okay. So I had gained 70 pounds. And in the process of losing it, I have looked back at pictures of myself and I was like, oh my God, never talk bad about yourself ever again. Like you were fit. And like during that time, I thought that I was fat. Like
Yeah.
that's where it's like looking back at that, I'm like, this was not healthy.
I Now that you mentioned that, I feel like I struggled a lot also with the same
Yeah, because
issues.
you want people because your upline was just telling you to like before and afters and like even to like lot of that stuff that was just passed down. I did not like it. I did not like it. And then they just announced 2 weeks ago, and like these people are losing their minds. Of They took away they're going to affiliate marketing.
Yeah, I saw that.
Right? So, like, and then I see these chicks just going to another
Yes.
MLM. It's like, what are you doing?
I just
Why aren't
same.
you know what I mean? Like, why aren't you putting together, like, what you've just learned for 14
Hmm.
years?
I did
And
that in a year and a half. I put together. I went off on my own. I was like, I'm making somebody else money. I can make myself money. Like I can
yeah,
train too.
right, because no matter what, like with the MLM structure and all of that stuff, it's like, listen, still at the end, and affiliate marketing. Affiliate marketing should be like 20% of your business, 30%. It does not need to be 100% because you are still working for another person. So, like when people are like, well, corporate America can take things away from you, like so can these businesses. It's not yours.
Yeah.
So, it's like blowing my mind of watching these girls that I used to be on a team with, like, dude, you could
I
create your own thing.
I feel
And
you hardcore on that. I
yeah,
I've been witnessing it too because I have tons of them.
yeah.
Speaking of like businesses and fun things,
Hmm.
you are the founder of National Sober Day.
Hmm. Yes.
That is amazing. How did you what inspired you to create this day?
Well, I was sitting there watching a show on Bravo Network one evening, and one of the chicks was like, she founded Outfit of the Day, right? And I was like, oh my God, there's no National Sober Day. Like, I've never heard of this. And again, this was back in 2019. And I'm like, I have never heard of a National Sober Day. So I went the next day and I went to the National Calendar Company just on the website. I sent in the information. I wanted to honor. I knew there was National Recovery Month. I wanted to honor that, so I put in on September 14th. I picked the 14th because both my grandmothers passed away on that day,
Oh,
but separate years. And one of my grandmothers quit drinking when her first grandson was born, and then the other one volunteered for American Red Cross for 35 years. And like, so
oh wow.
I had two of the greatest generation ladies ever. So I just wanted to honor them. But yeah, so I put in the information, picked that day, paid, and the lady came back and was like, "This isn't picked," and I was like, "You've got to be kidding me!" And she was like, "I'm just a surprise." So I paid for it, and we got a national holiday.
That is absolutely amazing. How
Mhm.
like what has it brought to your sober community creating this day?
Um, well, I mean, I think for it, I love the celebration on it on social media. I hope next year I can do a party. These last couple of years with having a little dictator has really, and then writing my book, I just did. There's only so much you can put on your plate, right? So
Right.
I'm really hoping that in next year that I can do a party. But I just like this is what I like about it. I like that it's a celebration. Yes, every day you should celebrate it. But anybody who discovers that holiday who might have been like, "Oh," cuz not everybody who's in with sober YouTube channels.
Yeah.
Not everybody knows about sober TikTok. No, not everybody knows about sober Graham, right? Like a lot of people still to this day just think like, it's AA and that's it. So a
Yep.
lot of people aren't aware of the community, or so we're podcasting. Like a lot of people aren't aware of this because when you're not in that, of course you don't have a clue, right? Like I'm sure that there's huge communities for horseback riding, like, you know what I mean, or horse breeding, like just stuff like that that I would never know of because that's not of my bubble, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted somebody to land on that, to be like, oh, okay, like heard it on the radio, like there's a National Sober Day, and then go look into it and realize that it is a celebration and an awareness of sobriety and addiction. And if you have a loved one and you're like, hey, I'll go sober with you this day, like let's celebrate it together. I think that's cool. So
Yeah, no, I love that. That is
mhm.
absolutely amazing. Um, so we kind of touched on everything, but or not everything, but leading up to this, what led you to start Sober Vibes, and how has the community grown since then? And also, do you feel like it's helped keep you accountable to never go back to alcohol?
So I started Sober Vibes, I believe it was my third year. I went to AA that summer. I tried it in the very beginning, like that first couple weeks when I got sober, and I'm like, no, this isn't my thing. And then I went because I do believe that everyone should participate, whether if it's just for 2 meetings and you're like, this is not my thing. And I'm a big believer of take what you want with everything and leave the rest, right? So I was like, I'm going to go. I'm going to go. And I participated for a summer, and I heard what the women were saying because I sat at a women's table. That's where I felt comfortable. And I'm listening to women be like, I really would love to go to a Tigers game, but I don't have anybody to go with me. Or, I'm nervous I'm going to drink. So I'm hearing these women be like, want more than just to go to work and go to a meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. So in that summer, I created what was the Sober Social Club. And we would meet once a week. And this just lasted a couple months because it's hard to get everybody together in person. So after I was like, okay, I can't, it's too hard to get everybody's schedules. And then so what I did is I just started building an online community and really empowering women and meeting women with where they're at, because when people want to quit drinking alcohol, not everybody is at the same spot.
Yeah.
And but what I mean by that is like some people, they have support at home. Some people don't, right? Some people have a growth mindset. Some people don't. Some people have very extreme rock bottoms. Some people don't. So it's just really about meeting you with where you're at and rolling from there, right? And empowering you and supporting you in that day. And really no more, no less. Like, and it's just I don't care how you got sober that day. If you don't want to go to AA meetings because you tried it and it's not your thing, cool. If you are very involved in AA and that is your thing, and cool. If you
Yeah.
go to a therapist, cool. If you want to get with the sober coach, cool. Whatever keeps you sober that day. And that's where I have a hard part. Like after so many years of this, it's just like, why is there still a constant battle on what somebody chooses? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like somebody could be working with an addiction therapist for 2-3 years. That is help. That is
Yeah.
help. You know what I mean? So, so that's how Sober Vibes really was created, because it was sitting there listening to what people needed.
That is amazing. And community is super key in this whole entire path.
Yeah, and I'm on, I'm all about the holistic approach to helping you add tools into your tool belt. There's more to learn within yourself, because you really have to rebuild yourself up. And to honestly, like at that time you asked, like, did it keep me accountable? I at that time was 3 years. It's what I also needed at that time, because I had been involved in Facebook groups, and during that time I was going through IVR, trying to conceive, and that was a 6-year battle. And I remember, I like to drop the F bombs, but I
You're
remember
fine.
saying I remember saying the F word in this Facebook post, and some troll under the bridge comes and comments, and she's like, "Well, that's probably why God didn't want you to have a baby, because of your mouth." I'm like, "All right, lady, F you." But this is what I'm talking about. So you're coming at me for dropping the F bombs, which highly
Like
intelligent people swear.
fully attacked you.
Yeah. for expressing my feelings. And then, but also too, I'm sure you were sitting at your home, binge drinking yourself and mother effing people and your cat. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm just like,
Yeah.
this is what I like. I just want a judgment free community. And so that too was kind of all in what that happened that summer where I was like, I'm over this. Also, as well, I was over creepy dudes. There's creepy women out there too. And I wanted just to create a community for women because I will stand by this that I do not believe that men and women should be in these rehabs together. I don't believe that they should be sitting at tables together. It needs to be separate.
Oh, I mean, I completely agree. My YouTube is co-ed, but we always said that if we do anything, it'll strictly be female
Yeah.
related because I mean, yeah, female men and female belong separated for sure.
Mhm. Yeah.
Feel
And I do,
feel you.
yeah, I coach dudes, but like my membership, it's in my Facebook group, it's female only because it's just like there's too many females who have trauma around with men, and I wanted a place for people to fully be able to express themselves and feel safe, right? Like
Yeah.
so, and with male energy, sometimes that's not gonna happen. So yeah. So
No.
so that's where Sober Vibes all started from.
Awesome. What are some common challenges uh, you see women in your community face, and how do you suggest they tackle them?
So the couple things that always come to mind is women with partners who drink, women facing quote unquote boredom.
Boredom.
And there's always another one and I'm like going to draw a blank, but there's those three ones are like the main ones. Partners, the boredom. Oh, and then like the friends and socializing. So with the partner, I always say to people, like, don't make a big decision until you're a year sober. Don't blow up your life until you're a year sober. And that one I do stand by, of when they're like, don't date. I can't tell you not to date because I was in a relationship. But I'm going to tell you not to, like, unless you're getting physically beaten, then you need to exit stage left. But like, you have to figure that out because when you quit drinking, you're at such a heightened vulnerability in this
Mm.
stage, like, and where they could just be annoying you, right? Like you could have a kid. It's like, just don't make those impulsive decisions when you're at like day 27. What you got to just ride it out and ride through the process of sobriety because it is a process and recovery, and then make a decision when you're stable, because you might f up your life and then be like 3 months down the road have more clarity and was like, oh, that really
Yeah.
wasn't how that was, right? Like, oh my God, I just divorced my, yeah, I just left my husband and we have these young kids together. Like, not really thinking because early on in sobriety, it's all about that like impulsive decision, those impulsive emotions that are coming to
Hmm.
the surface, and you really just have to take care of yourself. The boredom thing, again, what is boredom? We need to be bored, first of all, in this day and age. And like, I would rather be bored than still be on that cycle that I was for 10 years. I would rather be bored than puke on myself for a whole day in the floor, because that's what I did in that 3-day hangover experience. I was
Oh
like
gosh.
legit dry heaving on the floor, which
Oh.
was not my first rodeo of dry heaving on a floor, right? But like, that's not attractive. I would rather be bored than threatening people's lives, right? Like, or just have that like rancid hangover anxiety, like, or how about this? I would rather be bored than have one of those ugly cries when you're hammered by yourself at 8 p.m. being like, nobody loves me.
Oh
Like, just like
yes.
being a demon, being a
Right.
menace to
Yeah.
yourself. Right? And then, like, meanwhile, you have, like, you have loving people around you. Somebody's got one person, whether it's a friend or a significant other or your child or even your animal, right? Like, somebody loves you out there. So, and then the same thing for, like, the socialization thing. It's like a lot of women are very scared, and this is, again, where men and women are different because,
Hmm.
like, men can chill by themselves and be perfectly fine. I watched it for many years. I watched, it was a great social experiment of me and my active drinking bartending and then being a sober bartender. And so like men can really like chill by themselves. But women, it's very, very social and being accepted in all of that and like the mommy wine culture that goes on nowadays.
Yeah.
And I have to say to women, it's like, listen, you're going to find your new set of people, or you can still continue to hang out with these people. Just ask them to do something different. Empower yourself to switch up the plans, right? Like, do you want to keep living this way, or do you just want to fit in with the quote unquote Jones and not be left out of something? Because that goes back to your 18-year-old mindset, and you're a 42-year-old woman now.
Yeah.
It's a maturity level, right? Like, it's just like, I don't care about that. Like, the greatest thing that I ever did was those first 3 months, I sat my ass at home and crafted. I Mod Podge picture frames and watch and binge watch Friday Night Lights. I couldn't watch anything on Bravo. It was like too my best friends, the housewives, it was too jarring for me. So like I had to like sit and get comfortable because I was very social. My drinking was very social, right? So like I had to sit my ass down and calm my nervous system down
Oh my
and
gosh.
get
I
grounded.
I love that you brought all that up because I try to explain that to people, and I'm glad that you explained it in a different way. But it's still the same. It's like I isolated myself for definitely a few months before I decided to go and do things, and then I found myself actually doing things with my husband again, not just my friends.
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that was a big one. I was like, oh, let's go to a concert. Usually it was always just the females getting together. And you're right, I bartended for a minute, and it was always the males coming in by themselves and the females coming in with their friends.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then, of course, if a female came in by themselves, it was like, I mean, I never said it, but I had coworkers be like, what's wrong with her? Or like, it's like,
Right?
right. And like, so it's an experiment for sure. But that is like, there's a lot of people who have like the friend groups and relationships where they're so like enmeshed with each other, where it's
Mm-hmm.
like, would you even be with your husband or your wife if you guys didn't have these friends?
Yeah, that's a good
So,
question.
and that is the thing, like, Matt and I, we had to rediscover our relationship because for a year and a half, we drank together, you know? I mean, and Matt didn't have a drinking problem. Like, Matt was at the point, because he doesn't drink, he gave it up with me. Matt was at the point where he would have like 2 beers and then be very hungover the next day. He came from a family of severe alcoholism. At that point, he was like, "What is the point with alcohol?" You
Yeah.
know? So, we had to rediscover our relationship too, and it was not easy in the beginning, but then it's like, "Okay, now this is what we'd like to do."
Yeah, it's one of those things where we drank together for we've been married 10 years.
Mhm.
So we drank the majority of our relationship until just 16 months ago.
Mhm.
And it
Mhm.
was having to find a whole new, like, I remember saying, I think it was just not even maybe a month and a half. And I said, I don't like you. And it was like, because we had to and it was on the way home from the lake, and I was just so irritated because I wasn't able to drink.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't like you when I'm sober. and, but here we are. We're still going strong. We figured it out.
Yeah, but that's like one of those like heightened emotions. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Like, don't just like be like, I want a divorce, you know, when you're a month in. Like, no, you're gonna wait and take some time and figure it out, right? So yeah,
It's hard in the beginning. Um,
it is very hard because of those feelings and like the all the what ifs and whatnot. Like, so yeah, it's very hard.
for someone who's just decided to get sober, what are the first few things you recommend that they focus on?
Um, so the first few things that you need to focus on, well, one, I like to say this to anybody because you got to talk with your doctor. I like to say this disclaimer. You got to talk to your doctor about alcohol withdrawal. Like it can lead to seizures and death. So, and I don't know out of, you know, your great audience, I don't know what people have been drinking. So that's my disclaimer. So please talk with your doctor about alcohol withdrawal. Um, and doing it safely, and you need to decide if that's the avenue you need to go down. Really, in those first 30 days, I encourage you to sleep.
Sleep.
I encourage you to rest. I encourage you to take a social break. I'm not saying you need to become a hermit and never leave your house again, but like those first 30 days, let's just pump the brakes and don't overschedule yourself. Because what happens too with a lot of women, you will notice that you cannot continue to operate how you did.
Yeah.
And especially on the weekends, you have overscheduled yourself, and you will not find that out until you are sober and have some clarity and be like, oh my God, I can't do this on the weekends anymore, and not give yourself a little alone time, right? Like, so don't ever overschedule yourself, sleep, talk with a doctor, and have zero expectations.
Zero expectations. I
Z-
like that.
Yeah, zero expectations. And again, my book, it walks you through those first 3 months and what to expect. And there's journal prompts and coaching tips. And you really have to get down to your why. But like, don't take anything personally. Just like focus on you and not drinking for 30 days. Like,
Yeah.
it just that. And then you will get into after 30 days, focus on another 30 days. If 30 days is too much, just focus on a day at a time.
I like that. Um, the next question was your book. Uh, so it's a guide to thriving in your first 3 months without
Mhm,
alcohol,
mhm.
which focuses on thriving. Can you share what thriving looks like to you and how others can get there? Which you just said one day at a time.
Yeah, like, and the whole thing about thriving, again, it's about what works for you. This book is very tailored to the reader and the person going through this. Because here's the thing. If somebody tells you, you need to go to a meeting, you need to do this. And I use this because AA is all we've had, and even let's talk about the rehabs. Rehabs were luxurious for, like, not everybody has access to a rehab. I think now more and more insurances are covering it. But even back in 2012, like, rehabs were expensive. Okay. So that might not have been an option for you. And you might go and check out AA and you're like, this is not for me. And you need to figure out then what's your next step for help going to look like, because doing this white knuckling is not the move. Get some support, make it easier on yourself, right? So, like, I share suggestions of ways you can get help, you know, organizing your living space, doing a purge. I share how you can start telling people that you are not drinking. You don't need to tell somebody your whole effing life story when they ask you if you want a vodka tonic. All you need to, because listen, and this is where it goes with the expectations. Not everybody deserves your story. And
Right.
not everybody is emotionally aware to take in somebody's story and like really sit with it, because you might dump your story on somebody else, and where they then follow it up with, well, what do you do for fun now that you don't drink? And then,
Oh,
you know what I mean? So like, you have to really protect yourself and protect your energy. I don't believe of, you need to be, little white lies are okay. You can tell somebody, if you have to go to a social gathering, they're like, you want something to drink? No, thank you. I was just like, let's just say a Sprite. Like, I got a headache. I got to leave. Like, I'm just only here for about an hour. Okay. Like, you don't, just stop trauma dumping. I don't believe, like, that is too much pressure for people. And that's where I think a lot nowadays, it's like this pressure to like be honest, and then, tell people that you're an alcoholic, and then, oh, you're back on day 5. No, you got to start back on day 1. That's very shameful. That's like
yeah.
from a shame pointing, that's why I come from a shame-free place. Like, no, you need to do what works best for you. And that's really what my book is all about, of getting you through those first 90 days. I even talked to you, like, stop future tripping. Stop thinking about the wedding in Italy, that your brother is going to get married there when your brother is not even engaged. You know
Oh
what
my
I mean?
gosh.
Like, just like
Yes.
future tripping in that sense. Like, oh my God, how am I going to go to Paris and never drink wine ever again? You know what I mean? And this is stuff that I thought of in the very beginning too, or like, right? Like, how am I going to have sober sex? Like, how's that going to look? Right. So it's really about a healing process that you have to go through, and you need to figure out what thriving looks for you. Because everybody can have their own, it's like their own thing of what success looks for a person, right? Like what does thriving look for you in sobriety? What does that success look for you? Maybe you went 90 days and only drank twice. Well, let's celebrate those
Yeah.
88 days that you didn't drink. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you to go back and start at day one. What is the point of that?
Yeah.
Because relapse happens, and it is a part of a lot of people's journeys. And that's why when I was telling my story, that's why I was like, I need to say here, it took me 4 years to finally just be like, nope, I'm good and tired. I'm done.
Ooh, yeah.
Hmm.
That's a good one.
Hmm.
Um, so back to the social situations.
Hmm.
These can be challenging when you're sober. What are some of your go-to strategies for handling them?
Okay, so my social situation, this is the best, and I talk about it too in the book. And I've said this. I've kind of coined this like 60-minute rule. Okay, that when going out socially, if you have like a birthday party you need to go to, only go, this applies to anything, right? Only go for an hour. If you start feeling to the point where you're like getting ants in your pantsy and you're like building up anxiety, and I was like, oh my God, if I stay here 15 more minutes, I'm going to drink. So only stay for an hour and then leave. That is plenty of time to show up, be present, say, shake some hands, right? Like just like talk a little bit, and it's filling up your social cup. And then it's time to leave. So
Yeah.
like take that 60-minute rule into consideration with everything. And also too, if you get up one day and you're not feeling it, and you're about to start your period that day, or you started your period and you feel like an angry monster, you don't have to go. Like, let's
Yeah.
please normalizing not having to go to every event that we are invited to, because that is what you did in your old drinking self. And that old drinking self and your new sober self are not the same person, and
Right.
they're not going to be doing the same stuff. So like you can catch your friends on the next invite. Like, no, I just don't feel like going out. Like, you're not disappointing anybody. You're choosing you. So
Oh,
socially, the 60-minute rule. And like I said, if somebody asks you if you want a drink, no, or I already got one. As a again person who bartended, I cannot even tell you how many people came up to me and was like, can you just make a drink that looks like a drink? And I was like, no problem. Please grease the bartender, throw them a 10 to 20 spot, right? Like, but they will make you a mocktail. Now there's mocktails in NA beers. Like, you don't
yeah.
like, and you don't, if somebody's like, what are you drinking? A vodka tonic. Like, that's it. Nobody's going to be smelling your drink or asking for a sip of it post 2020 times.
Oh, we live in a very heavily LDS state, so people automatically assume that you are LDS if you say you don't drink. But so that's like where I think it's funny because, yeah, I don't know. Because we
No,
always have to have like
like,
an excuse, like, I'm not drinking, but I am not this also.
yeah, say, I mean, are you Mormon?
No, no.
Okay. Are you live in Utah?
I live in Idaho. I'm not
Oh,
as
okay.
much, it's not as big as Utah, but there's still, we are surrounded by them.
Mormons fascinate me. Oh, like just it's that like that whole that really that's fascinates me. So yeah, I'm like I'm sure, right? But
Yeah.
then there's too like then now there's like new Mormonism where it's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna drink, where these people are just making their own rules, right?
Yeah. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, I could go on and on about that. um, so, what's next for you and Sober Vibes? Are there any upcoming projects or goals that you're excited about?
Well, I hope to do another book. That is definitely on the list, and I hope to do for sure, National Sober Day party. And just now that my child is in school a couple days a week, I have more time. The past 3 years, it's really just been about him and that new role of motherhood and getting better myself. Because as you know, that postpartum experience is crazy and
Yep.
lasts up to 2 years. So I hope for another book and just keep growing the community and podcasts and being here to help people start their sober journey.
So I have to ask. So you said you did IVF. Do you think alcohol played a part in your infertility?
No. Mm-mm,
No.
mm-mm.
Sorry. I mean,
No, no,
totally
no,
different
no.
topic, but like,
No. That's quite fine. But no, it did not. It did not, because we got the answer for it.
Oh, okay.
For a long time, I did shame myself those first couple years and into that process, that, some decisions that I had made
Hmm.
in my active drinking days, that where I'm like, okay, is this my karma now? Right. So like that played into part, but no, we had the answer of what was going on with that. So yeah, but
But
it's a good
now
question.
you have a little guy.
Yeah, I call him the dictator
The
on the airways.
dictator. Is he like
Mhm.
4 or 5?
He's 3. He's 3.
3? Oh, okay, yeah. No,
Yeah. So
you're in it.
yeah, exactly. So
Mine are 6 and 8.
okay. So yeah, so it's just, having now that free time, as you know, like, I mean, it's crazy how much you can get done in 2 days. So that's just kind of like, and I've always been like that. I don't know if you're like this, but I've always been like that, even like within business. It's like you really do go through seasons. In
Hmm.
the last couple of years, it was like, I mean, I will always be in mom mode now, because that's what I've wanted. And especially to be a sober present mother is like, he will always come first. But for sure, like now it's about getting me and then continuing on with sober vibes. I hope to do speaking events too.
That, yeah. Do you
Mhm.
ever hold on? Uh, I have so many things. I was gonna say, you're lucky that you never had to deal with your drunk self being a mom. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many times that I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh. But now my
Hmm.
kids have a whole different, whole different
Hmm.
person. And, but it's sad because they're like, we don't ever want you to drink again. I'm like, so,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, you're very blessed in that situation.
Thank you.
Um,
Well, I mean, but you still are too, because they're young, right? Like,
yeah.
and a lot of women that I know who quit when they were like in their 50s. And when I was going through like being pregnant, and I hope anybody who needs this piece of advice, and they said it to me, like being pregnant and then having that like first year, they're like, you are so lucky. And it was more than one woman who said this to me, where they're like, you are so fortunate to not be in your drinking days, and where they're like, I wish I could go back and do that all differently. Right.
Yeah.
So like, anyone listening to that, I have just taken that piece of advice, because even though it's been, a lot of people will be like, wow, 12 years, that's a long time. But as you know, when you become a mom, there's so much more that goes into that mentally. And like, yeah, there was a couple nights there at 4 months where I was like 2 a.m. getting a little shaky and wonky eyed, being like, oh my God, because he didn't sleep. Right. So like, that's why you have to continuously revisit your new why in different phases of your life, of meeting yourself out with where you are now, right? So like now it's like, okay, the dictator, I want him to experience this present mother, and go from there.
Not the drunk mom stumbling down the hall and
Yeah.
can't function properly the next day because you drank too much.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's,
Right. But it's like, it's a serious problem that
it is.
mothers are faced with. And like, and still, there was a woman I interviewed on my podcast, and she was talking about breastfeeding, and her doctor was like, have a Guinness a day. So she was like, oh, okay. And she was like, that Guinness a day then turned into 2, then turned into 3. Like, she was like, so it was like, became habitual, and like something that I looked forward to, right? Like, that drinking started in my postpartum. That's one of the most dangerous times of a woman's life. And here we have medical professionals be like, well, here you go, drink some Guinness
I
to
drink
get you.
IPA. I drink IPA to get my milk coming in, so I get it.
Yeah, like, and I mean, during my experience, I got diagnosed with OCD, or postpartum OCD, which
Mhm.
I was like, excuse me, can we talk about how you never heard of this? I just focused on anxiety or depression, so I was like, I'm cool, but what are these thoughts? Like,
Yeah.
so it's just, and then people will come over and bring mom's wine. Like, stop bringing alcohol as a gift. Just stop. It's played out. It's not even it, it's not even like, you're not even thinking, like, it's just like, it's not a thoughtful gift. And
No.
actually, if you want to bring a mother who just had a kid something, bring her your time. Like, can I please sit with, can I watch the baby and you go sleep for an hour? Like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Stop. Alcohol does not need to be a gift anymore. So,
I get that one.
mhm.
So what would you like to say to anyone listening who's sober curious or struggling with sobriety?
Well, if you're sober curious, because I have a thing about that too, but like, if you're struggling in your relationship with alcohol, I would just say this in general. If you're struggling and you're like, this isn't working for me, listen to your gut. My gut was telling me at 25, like, you're not going to drink one day, right? Like, because our intuitiveness is one of the biggest gifts that we have. Just listen to that. And like, your life will get better without alcohol. You just got to walk through the process of it. So your relationship's never going to get better. And you're just going to beat your head up against the wall and make it 10 times worse for yourself. So if you have that, I need to give up alcohol, listen to it and give it up. Stop waiting. Stop waiting until next Monday. Stop waiting until January 1st of 2025.
Oh my
Stop
gosh.
waiting, right, till like February 15th. Stop, oh, I'm going to wait till after St. Patrick's Day. Like, just, the time is now, because your drinking self and alcohol never want you to quit drinking. So like, listen to your gut and give it up.
Oh yeah, that's so good. I have a lot of
Mhm.
people who are like, well, I'm just gonna wait until after my birthday, or I'm just gonna wait until after the holidays, or Monday I start better on Mondays, or next week. Or
Mhm.
I'm like, just try now. Like,
Mhm.
what's so
Mhm.
hard about it? I mean,
Okay.
I guess I was similar to you, I guess.
Mhm.
I didn't do the withdrawals, and it was just we did a program and I ended up staying sober through that. And now I like try to tell people you have to stay busy. I mean,
Mhm.
you have to do things.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, I don't know how you, I don't have any coaching
Mhm.
like you do, because I mean, you have many more years than I do. But like, I try to tell people, like, go on walks, get outside,
Mhm.
like, listen and read positivity, or like self help books.
Mhm.
Like, those started helping me, like, even before I even thought I was even gonna attempt to quit drinking.
Yeah.
And they're huge, I think.
Yeah, yeah, you got to keep, and that's why, like, what I'm, how when I coach women, it's about that. It's really about that witching hour for people, and you got to do some things differently. You got to rearrange your schedule. Like, even in the book, when I'm like, feng shui, that stale ass energy that you've been sitting in, feng shui it up. Let's get out a smudge stick and like cleanse the energy,
Yeah.
because the drinking you've been sitting in is stale. Like, but you have to keep yourself busy. Walking is great, and that cravings, really, they only last for 7 to 20 minutes. So you might have to scream into a pillow and cry, and that's okay, because what you have to remember is, all of these years you've suppressed, so these feelings have to come out in some way, so like, just keep yourself busy.
So we can find you, my audience can find you on Instagram, and
Yep.
you have a book.
Mhm, mhm. Yep. You can go to my website, CourtneyRecovered.com. My book, Sober Vibes: A Guide to Thriving in Your First 3 Months Without Alcohol. It's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. You can find it on my website too. I party most on Instagram, and then my podcast, you can find Sober Vibes, which I do have it on YouTube, but I don't have video like you do. It's just the audio. But yeah, it's on all podcast networks.